What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 10 best builds in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. And if you're looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video's description or the pinned comment. And before we begin, personally for me I love to create new and unique builds in Path of Exile 2. So when I heard that Age of Empires Mobile also features a tech tree, realistic army structures, unique hero skills and many more things, then I just had to show it to you. So Age of Empires Mobile is an immersive medieval war strategy game that has been co-developed by the Microsoft World Edge, and preserves the classic Age of Empires elements while introducing a new gameplay and controls optimized for mobile devices. Very similar to POE 2, this game puts emphasis on strategy and teamwork through the gameplay, so when you're not on your PC, this is definitely the best game to relax in, while also at the same time being very interesting, interactive and engaging. On top of this, unlike the traditional RTS structure, Age of Empires Mobile also combines elements of empire building, multiplayer sieges and endless range of tasks, from fishing minigames to a vampire survival styled battle mode. And overall the gameplay is super fun, by offering you a huge amount of activities to keep you engaged. They also just released a major update, and now is the perfect time to try it out. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and don't miss out on claiming super cool in-game item rewards for free. This setup pretty much just runs insanely fast and shows out freeze bottles at your enemies that explode through hundreds of targets. We are going to be doing about 5 million DPS with a fully maximized gear, and we are also going to be able to perma-freeze mobs and pinnacle bosses, which will give us a very easy playstyle, as we won't have to worry about the enemies too much. Also, for our defense, we are stacking as much energy shield as possible, which will give us anywhere from 8 to 15,000 shields. This setup uses a nice shot in the combination with the lightning rod and a blink, which will give us this insane mobility and speed farming potential. What I like most about this setup is that we can simply spam one single skill and pretty much destroy tier 16 maps and reach up to 5 million DPS because of how many buffs we have working in the background. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses by us having a very high single target damage by using the lightning rod and the orb of storms. This setup is super fun and has insane amount of lightning damage. Also, as you can see, it is one of the most visually impressive builds in the game, as the sorceress paralyzes and destroys monsters with a barrage of lightning. The archmage with the lightning condiant and the spark skill together will make up the bulk of our insane DPS. And at some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem. But lucky for us, the sorceress has many tools to address this problem, and with optimized gear we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. This setup's main focus is to lock down your enemies with quick freezes that last a long time. Even bosses are vulnerable to being frozen, and we can just lay down insane amount of DPS while they're stuck doing absolutely no damage. Your main gameplay will revolve around using the Ice Strike to close the gap between the enemies, then drop the Tempest belt to help you do more damage, and then activate your charged staff and the Shattering palm to engage the ranged enemies before they can even hit you, or just to completely melt them down in a second. This build is currently one of the best and fastest setups that you can use to farm maps and other endgame content. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses by having also a very high boss damage, by using the cast on shock and the ball lightning. This setup summons a raging spirit by casting the flame wall for offense, and then also for defense we get to command a minion army. So unlike most other setups where we are just only commanding or casting spells, well in this one we get to do both, and thus increase our DPS even higher. By using specific gear and building our skill tree around the nodes like the Power of the Dead, Fear the Dead, Silent Guard and many more, it will enable us to upgrade our minions and projectile area and damage. This build focuses on the Flicker Strike, which generates massive amounts of frenzy charges from combat frenzy by freezing and electrocuting enemies, which when we can further convert the power charges with our resonance keystone, Every time we have the power charges, we spend them on the flicker strike, to basically fly through the multiple screens of enemies like you can see from the gameplay. This is structured around using the Hexblast in the combination with other chaos skills that will curse and explode enemies in very wide area. Overall, the Hexblast has a quite high mana cost, and that's why to make it efficient, we are going to be using the Mask of the Sanguimancier, which will give us blood magic and increase critical hit chance. So now we can convert mana cost into life. On top of this, when possible, we can also utilize the Asterisk gloves, so then this combination would completely remove the mana from the equation and give us the ability to infinitely spam the Hexblast and do massive amounts of damage without worrying about anything. The main gameplay idea behind our setup is just to one-shot most enemies, and as they will die, they will continuously replenish our life and energy shield. This is the best warrior build by far. This setup's main focus is to run and press from 1 to 2 skills, and target big enemy groups to then weaken them and explode. One of the most powerful skills that we have in our arsenal is the Shockwave Totem, which does incredible amount of AoE damage, and as you can see from the gameplay, we are just running into the enemies and one-shotting them without even trying. Also, our Ancestral Warrior Totem and the Scavenge Planning makes the most out of this, by effectively extending the damage of our hits many times over, in order to eliminate big targets like the bosses or tanky rare monsters. This setup is also more known as the Stat Stacker. Our main goal is to stack as much strength, dexterity and intelligence as possible, to then scale it with our unique items such as Pillar of the Cage God and the Hand of the Wisdom in Action. One of the best things about our setup is that all it needs to function at the start is the Pillar of the Cage God, which is pretty affordable on a budget, but then later on we can scale it incredibly high with a massive power upgrade. Our main playstyle will revolve around using the Tempest Fury in the combination with the Charged Staff, that can hit multiple times and create lightning shockwaves, that as you can see will destroy enemies in split seconds. This should not be a surprise to anyone, but the Temporalis body armor can no longer reduce cooldowns of a skill below 100 ms, so this pretty much nerfed most spam blink builds. This is not a complete nerf, so they're still good, but you just can't spam them that easily. This setup is the original Spark build with a blink and few more changes, and our main spark damage will mainly scale up from the projectile size, their speed and duration, so we will build upon these three things to create a screen-wide electricity, which also thanks to the Archmage and the Constant Gale will enable us to upgrade our mana into giving us more damage and defenses at the same time. On top of this, all the other sorceress builds usually have mana issues. However, as you can see from the gameplay, we are barely losing any of it, because of our specific items and passives like the Force of Will, Mana on Kill and etc. This build utilizes the Skeletal Frost Mages by buffing them insanely high, so then we can do a huge amount of damage in return. They also will freeze enemies and bosses, so most of the hard content will be like a walk in the park. This build's greatest strength is its primary defense, so we will have a massive amount of energy shield, and by using the Grim Feast we will double it, so in the endgame we will be able to reach up to 30,000 energy shields. On top of this setup's playstyle will allow you to clear quite aggressively, while still being able to pull back and let your minions protect you from the enemies whenever needed.